Is this the end? Real Madrid's Champions League dream in serious danger, and for the first time in what feels like forever, a question that once sounded impossible now echoes across Europe with genuine fear and fascination. Because Real Madrid, the club that turned the Champions League into its personal kingdom, suddenly looks vulnerable, uncertain, and exposed in a competition it once controlled with divine inevitability. And as the lights shine bright and the anthem still rings through the Bernabeu, there is an uncomfortable silence underneath the noise, a silence filled with doubt, because this season has not followed the script that history promised, and for a club built on European dominance, even the smallest crack feels like the beginning of an earthquake. And the story of this campaign is not about one bad night or one unlucky result, but about a slow, creeping realization that the margins have closed, the aura has faded, and the Champions League is no longer bending to Madrid's will as it once did. And to understand why this moment feels so dangerous, you have to understand what Real Madrid represents in Europe. Because this is not just another elite club chasing success, this is the institution that defines success itself. 14 titles, countless comebacks, impossible moments, and nights where logic collapsed under the weight of belief, and opponents walked onto the pitch already beaten. And for decades, Real Madrid did not just play the Champions League, they haunted it, they reshaped it, they turned it into a stage where destiny wore white. But football evolves, and history alone does not win matches. And this season, the warning signs have been impossible to ignore. From the opening fixtures, Madrid looked like a team searching for answers rather than delivering statements. The fluid dominance of past years replaced by hesitation, the ruthless control replaced by moments of chaos. And even victories felt fragile, as if held together by individual brilliance rather than collective authority. And when results began to wobble, the world noticed, because Real Madrid wobbling in Europe is not normal, it is seismic. And the new Champions League format has only amplified the tension, removing the safety nets of the past and forcing giants to prove themselves every single week, with no room for reputation or comfort. And suddenly, Real Madrid found themselves in unfamiliar territory, outside automatic qualification, staring at playoff uncertainty, something that once would have been unthinkable. And for fans who grew up watching Madrid stroll through group stages, this felt like betrayal by reality itself. And the reasons behind this struggle are layered, complex, and deeply revealing, because this is not about a single weakness, but about a convergence of challenges that have arrived all at once, beginning with the transition of an era. Because while the names on the team sheet still sparkle, the spine that once defined Madrid's European dominance has aged, evolved, or moved on. And replacing legends is never just about talent, it is about mentality, timing, and chemistry. And while the club has recruited brilliantly on paper, blending youth with stardom, the balance has not always translated on the pitch, especially under the unique pressure of Champions League nights, where every mistake is magnified and every lapse punished mercilessly. And the midfield, once the heartbeat of Madrid's control, has faced moments of instability where control slips, rhythm breaks, and opponents find space they once could not even dream of accessing. And without that midfield dominance, Madrid's defensive line has been exposed, forced to defend longer, deeper, and more desperately than they are comfortable with. And this leads to another concern. The defensive solidity that once allowed Madrid to survive chaos is no longer guaranteed. Individual errors, miscommunications, and lapses in concentration have crept into matches, turning manageable situations into full-blown crises. And in a competition where margins are razor thin, these moments can define an entire season. And then there's the attack, which despite its star power has struggled for consistency, because while moments of magic still arrive, they do not arrive often enough or reliably enough to mask the structural flaws beneath. And reliance on individual brilliance is a dangerous game when facing elite opponents who are tactically drilled, fearless, and increasingly unimpressed by Madrid's reputation alone. And perhaps the most unsettling factor of all is psychological, because for years Real Madrid carried an unshakable belief that no matter the situation they would find a way. But belief must be fed by results, and when results wobble, belief begins to crack. And opponents sense it. They press harder, attack bolder, and play without fear because the myth of inevitability has been weakened. And this psychological shift is visible in the body language, the hesitation, the moments where players look to the bench for answers rather than taking control themselves. And when Real Madrid stops imposing its will, the Champions League becomes a very different battlefield. And the new format has only intensified this reality because there are no easy groups, no slow starts, no room to grow into the competition. Every match matters, every point counts, and for the first time, Real Madrid has been forced into a playoff scenario where one bad tie can end everything in an instant. And while history suggests Madrid thrives in knockout chaos, this time the chaos feels different, heavier, more uncertain, because the safety of dominance is gone, replaced by the risk of elimination before the tournament even truly begins. And that's why this moment feels so dangerous, because an early exit would not just be a failure, it would be a symbolic shift, a signal to Europe that the Kings can bleed. And once that perception changes, everything follows. Recruitment dynamics, opponent confidence, managerial pressure, and internal belief all come under scrutiny. And speaking of management, the spotlight inevitably turns to the man on the sidelines, because managing Real Madrid in transition is one of the most brutal jobs in football history. Balancing egos, youth, expectations, and immediate success while navigating tactical evolution and European pressure is a task that has ended careers. And while experience and calm have guided Madrid through storms before, this storm feels more complex because it's not just about tactics or motivation, it's about redefining identity in real time while the competition waits for no one. And critics argue that adaptability has been slower than required, that in-game reactions have not always matched the intensity of modern European football, where pressing structures, transitions, and positional discipline define success. And when Madrid fails to adjust quickly, they are punished brutally, because opponents no longer sit back in awe, they attack with conviction and belief. And yet, despite all these warning signs, writing off Real Madrid has always been the most dangerous mistake in football history, because if there is one club capable of rewriting narratives overnight, it's this one. And that's what makes this story so compelling, because it exists in a tension between decline and defiance, between vulnerability and legacy, because even now, even at their most uncertain, Real Madrid remains a nightmare draw for anyone, because within the chaos there is still experience, still winners, still players who have lifted this trophy and felt its weight, and those memories do not disappear overnight. And the Bernabeu on a European night still carries a power that statistics cannot measure, and that's why the question, is this the end, does not have a simple answer, because Real Madrid exists in a space where endings are rarely final, and collapses often precede miracles. But the difference this time is that the path is steeper, the margin thinner, and the competition fiercer than ever before, and survival will demand more than moments. It will demand coherence, resilience, and evolution. And the playoff looming ahead is not just a match, it's a referendum on Real Madrid's current identity, a test of whether this team can still summon the old magic when it matters most, or whether the Champions League has finally caught up with Madrid. And as fans argue, analysts debate, and rivals watch with anticipation, one truth remains undeniable. Real Madrid's Champions League dream is in serious danger, not because they lack history, but because history alone no longer guarantees survival. And what happens next will define not just this season, but the direction of the club for years to come, because a deep run would validate the transition, reinforce belief, and remind Europe why Madrid is different, while an early exit would accelerate questions, force decisions, and mark the true end of an era. And that's why every touch, every tackle, and every moment in the coming matches carries extraordinary weight, because this is not just another campaign, this is a crossroads where legacy meets reality, and only one will prevail. And whether this story ends in heartbreak or another chapter of unbelievable defiance is what makes the Champions League and Real Madrid an eternal obsession, because when the Kings are threatened, the world watches and holds its breath.